Hi, I'm Laura the archaeologist, back again for another video. This time we're going to be talking about how to do a field walk. Now, archaeological field walking is a really easy way of finding out about your local area and what could possibly be under your feet in a ploughed field. All you have to do is walk up and down a field that you have permission to be on, looking for objects in the ground. And when you find an object, we will record where it's found. It's a really popular way of finding out about your area because there is absolutely no digging involved or any technical equipment. All you need are your walking boots, you need tape measures and some made up flags from canes, but you also need a plan. Fields are ploughed by farmers to loosen the soil and bury last year's crops and any weeds. This then creates a fresh topsoil surface. Any artefacts that were buried in the lower layers of the soil may be picked up by the plough and turned over with the fresh soil so that they appear on the surface. The finds on the surface are moved around in the topsoil every time it's ploughed, sometimes disappearing, other times reappearing. Most field walking is therefore carried out during the winter and early spring months when the fields have been ploughed and allowing to rest for a period of time. Obviously, this field, we are visiting it in July. That's why there are crops still on the fields. But if we find high concentrations of artefacts on the ground, that might suggest that there is something bigger and more interesting underneath the surface, such as a settlement or even a place where people were buried. One of the most common methods of field walking that archaeologists use is called a transect field walk. This is when we split an area up into a series of parallel lines about 10 metres apart. We normally start from a field edge and use tapes and tall bamboo canes to measure and mark out the 10-metre distance between each line and put them at each end of the field. If a field was 100 metres long and 100 metres wide, this would mean 10 parallel lines. That's not quite the end of the field, but you get the gist. And now we're ready to field walk. But obviously I can't do it on my own. It's a very big field. So this is my friend Dennis. Dennis is going to help us do our field walk today.
Hi.
Each walker carries some plastic finds bags and a number of smaller bamboo canes and is assigned a particular transect to walk. Walking in a straight line between the two canes at either end of the field, the walker then scans over the soil in front and around them. If any artefacts are found, they are placed in a finds bag and marked with a cane. These are then left where they were found, and the walker continues. When the walker has finished walking between the two canes at either end of the field, they then go back along the same route and record each find with a number and record its location on a handheld GPS device. You can also use letters. We're using a 3-letter finds code. This is very important so that it can be easy to locate where the finds have come from and therefore the potential areas of human activity. If you don't have a GPS, The line that is being walked can be split into 10-metre sections so that every time a section is completed, the finds can be left next to a marker or another cane at every 10 metres. This means you lose the exact position of the artefact, but you are still within 10 metres of that spot. So this can be accurate enough when it comes to locating archaeology that you would like to dig. When it comes to field walking and looking at the ground, you may find a lot of objects. So what is it that we actually pick up? It is better to bag something if you're unsure of what it is and throw it away later if it's not useful, rather than not pick it up at all and regret it later. As a rule, the following groups of materials may be collected: pottery of all types, building materials such as bricks, tiles and mosaics, clay smoking pipe fragments, stone tools such as flints. Some of these pieces of flint could be worked tools or just waste flints. Sometimes they can even be burnt. They will look like they've got a crazy paving pattern on them if they are. Building stone as well. This can be worked, it can be shaped and decorated in places. Glass is also quite important, both bottle glass and window glass. Metals such as iron, lead or copper, but you can also find waste metals called slag. These come from industrial processes. Bones and shell can also be picked up, animal or human, but we hope you don't find too much of those. Bone tools can be found too sometimes. So now we've done our field walking, what happens next? All the artefacts are carefully washed, with the exception of metal finds or material too fragile to keep handling. They are then allowed to dry before being analysed and recorded. Artefacts are classified using the groups described above. So after we've done our field walk and we've collected up all of our artefacts, put them into bags, we then bring them to an archaeological office and we bring them to a finds officer. And this is my friend Rosie, and she is a finds officer. What she does is she lays out all of the finds on the table like we have here, and she will be able to then tell us how old some of our objects are. Some of them are a little bit harder to date, and when it comes to things like bones, we might not necessarily know what animal they are from. So certain objects might go to specialists. But for now, we have laid out all of our finds that we might find during a field walk, and Rosie is going to help us identify them. So, Rosie, which one would you like to help us with first?
I think we should probably start with the oldest.
Oh, the oldest.
So, at the back here, we have some Roman pottery. This is just Roman greyware that you might find in a field, particularly in Nottinghamshire or Derbyshire. Let's see, what's next?
So why are they funny shapes?
This bit's the rim of a pot. So the bit that goes around the top, the opening, that's the rim. So that would be where the rest of the pot comes out and goes to the base, like this bit.
So would it look something like this if it had been whole?
Something like that, yes. So these bits, that way up, would be the bit at the top of the neck, like that. And then something like this bit would be the bit at the bottom, the base.
Wow, that's pretty good. And how old would that be if it's Roman?
So these bits would be over 1,000 years old, something like 1,800 years old.
Wow, that's pretty old. And sometimes we can just find these pieces sat on the surface of the ground, so that's really cool. So what would we find from about 1,000 years ago to maybe 800 years ago? What kind of things on here would we find?
So, about that time you're looking at medieval sort of things. So you've got these pieces, this lovely green stuff.
Wow, it's really green.
stuff that you would find around Nottinghamshire and, well, pretty much around the country. You've also got some stuff like this, which has got little pieces of shell and things in it.
Oh, is that what the white speckles are? Are they all bits of shell?
Yes.
Wow, that's really nice.
What
So
else?
those are the kind of things you might find from places that might have a castle, for example.
Indeed.
That's
These
really
pieces
cool.
are actually from Nottingham Castle.
So these are from Nottingham Castle.
Yes.
Fab. Because Wellow also has a castle, so maybe one day if we ever dig it up, we might find pieces like
Indeed.
that. That's very exciting.
Well, if it's a castle, you might find things like those.
And what are these?
They are musket shot.
So these are the things that people would shoot at each other out of big muskets.
Yep.
And what are they made of?
They're made of lead.
Lead, and they're quite heavy.
hmm
One day, if you ever get a chance to see one of these or hold one, you will realise just how heavy they are.
It'll hurt if that hits
It
you.
would hurt a lot, yes. But what about, so we're not near a castle, we're just in a farmer's field, so we might find bits of Roman, we might find bits of medieval, but I'm assuming we might find more of the modern pottery, which is all this over here, isn't it?
Yes. So this is what we call post-medieval pottery, and it sort of stretches from after the Tudors, from the 15th century to modern times, basically. So going through history, you've got these bits are older, these bits are Cistercian ware, and you've got some slipware, which is this lovely pattern piece. And then as you come through history, you get some salt glazed stoneware that would have been in a bottle like this. Sometimes they have where they come from stamped on them. And then as you get into more recent history, you get these lovely blue pieces.
So some of these, they have like Chinese patterns on them, don't they? Like Chinese pictures.
It's called willow pattern.
And they would have maybe made plates and bowls.
Plates, bowls, things for serving your dinner out of, teapots. Seen some very nice teapots.
Wow, oh nice teapots. So we are more likely to find these things than maybe these. So what, if we're walking through a field, should we be looking out for when it comes to pottery? Do you think we should be looking for shiny surfaces? Because quite a lot of these seem quite shiny.
You do get the shiny surfaces, but you also get your dull surfaces and things.
So you have to really keep an eye out for those then.
When they're orange and things, they're quite easy to pick up in the field. You can spot them
Yes.
against the mud, which is quite nice.
So moving away from pottery, what other things might we find? What are these down here?
These are flints. Flints are naturally occurring in chalk and things, but people throughout history have found them very useful as they're very hard and you can make all sorts of things out of them. So you can chip them up and make them into things like blades and arrowheads. You can use them as strikers, and in some areas of the country they put them in walls of houses.
Wow, so it can be a very good material to find then, because if we don't normally find flint in the field that we are walking across, it might be that somebody has brought those materials in to turn into tools and things.
Indeed, in an area where flint isn't particularly natural, when you have flint in a field, it is very clear that somebody has brought it in to use it for a particular thing, like as part of a hunting activity.
So
something like
hunting
that.
deer and rabbits and horses
Yes.
and things. Wow, that's amazing. So what are these things over here then?
So over there you have some animal bone. You might find them in big chunks like that, or you might find them in little pieces where they've been broken up.
And it's these kind of things that we need specialists for, don't we?
Yes.
Because we're not all experts on what bone came from where. Me especially.
There are lots of animals, and a specialist can look at the shape and the size and tell you what animal they've come from, which part of the body. They can also tell you how old the animal is. For example, I think one holding up, the end is unfused. When both animals and humans get to a certain age, little bits of bone fuse onto other parts, and it can tell you how old an animal is or how old a human is.
So I suppose when you have a lamb for roast dinner, that would be a baby sheep. So obviously their bones will look different to the adult sheep.
Yes.
These aren't human though, right?
No.
Human bones look a little bit different.
Human bones look quite different, yes.
And a lot bigger than that. So don't worry, these aren't humans. So here, I can tell what this one is. It is definitely glass.
Yep.
And I'm assuming the flat bits are going to be from windows
Mm-hmm.
and the curved bits are going to be from bottles. I see though that this one has some writing on it.
Sometimes you'll find them stamped with makers' names or factory names, where they came from and things. So if you can get enough of a piece with enough letters on it, it can tell you what it contained at some point and who and where it was made.
And it would have maybe looked something like that. This is a bottle potentially from the Victorian times, so about 150 years ago. And it may have had medicine in it, maybe some kind of a drink.
Some cod liver oil.
Cod liver oil to keep yourself healthy. Well, you might not find a whole bottle though whilst field walking, because the field's going to have been ploughed over and over again. So it might be that you won't find a whole one, you might just find small bits like we've got on the table here. So if I was to take a metal detector with me, these are the kind of things I might find with the metal detector.
Yeah, you might pick up all sorts of things. You could pick up nails and things, some of which might look quite modern but could be Roman. If you get
Wow.
hobnails or something like that, which came out of a Roman shoes, you might pick those up in the soil. Then you might get lead objects like this. Sometimes they are quite battered and beaten up and you're not entirely sure what they are.
I mean, I have no idea what that is.
Yeah, I must admit.
But sometimes I imagine we'd have to send these off to specialists as
Yes.
well, because they may be able to tell us what they might be. The problem with lead objects though is that they can be poisonous. So if you do find a lead object, you don't want to then put your fingers anywhere near your mouth. Make sure you wash your hands before you eat or do anything else with your fingers if you find lead objects. So what are these then, Rosie? Because these are really weird. Quite a lot of people think that these are crayons, but they're not crayons, are
They're
they?
not crayons. They are clay tobacco pipes. So they're the predecessor to cigarettes and things like that. They would have put tobacco in the top, lit it up and smoked it.
So it would have originally looked a lot bigger,
Yes.
like something like that.
If anybody's seen The Hobbit, Bilbo Baggins smokes one.
Right, so if you've not seen The Hobbit or Lord of the Rings, that is a good place to start if you want to know more about clay pipes.
They are from the 16th, 17th hundred and continue on, and we can date them quite nicely because of how big they are and things like that. And on the bowls and things, you get different features. You might even get a stamp from where it was made and things like that, so you can
Wow.
trace them and date them very nicely.
So some of these could be up to 400 years old.
Yes, they can.
That's amazing, that's really old. And then, finally, I suppose, really, the thing that most people try and find whilst they're out and about looking for pretty things, what is this?
That is a coin or a jeton.
So, sometimes the coins can be really, really flat. So you have to be really careful when you're walking over the field not to miss interesting things like this. What kind of things can the coins tell us? Do they have dates on them and things like that?
Most of them will have a picture of the ruler, like your pound coin in your pocket has a picture of a queen on it. Well, your coin will have a picture of whatever ruler was around at the time. And depending on when he had the coins made, they might contain different elements, little decorations that help us date them. Sometimes they even have dates on them.
And
Depends on the age.
do these need to go to specialists as well then?
They do. They get looked after so that they stay nice and lost the word.
Preserved?
Preserved, yep, preserved for us. And a coin specialist will have a look in detail at all the little elements that are on there, what it says around the outside, whether the king's looking one way or the other, or whether he's got dots on either side of his head or something like that, and will tell us exactly when it was made.
Wow. But these are quite unlike, you might not necessarily find lots of coins whilst
No.
just field walking.
Sometimes you might find them cut in half.
Sometimes it might be in half.
Yes.
Is that where halfpenny comes from?
It does, yes.
Wow.
So they might not even be whole if you do find one.
Wow. And I suppose alongside all of this, you may find bits of brick. Sometimes you might find tiles. You might even find modern roof slates and roof tiles. But all of these things help us tell the story of that field that you are walking across. So make sure you keep a good eye out for everything and always bag it, just in case it does turn out to be quite important. So thank you, Rosie, for showing us all of these wonderful objects. The information is then entered onto a spreadsheet chart along with the numbers or letters if you're using letters. And in some cases you'll also put information such as how heavy they are and how many of each type there are in a bag. This information can then be plotted on a map of the area walked. The more finds of a certain age found in one area can then show us on a map where there may be good archaeology underneath the soil and therefore the best places to dig.